In today's video, we will cover two horrifying caving stories. In the first, an explorer finds himself badly tangled in the ropes while ascending a bone-chilling waterfall, trapped in a fight for survival. In the second, an eager caver crawls into a narrow side passage only for massive boulders to suddenly shift and thunder down, sealing the gap behind her. As always, viewer discretion is advised.
Ellison's cave isn't just any hole in the ground. It's an underground cathedral for vertical cavers, a vast tiered system of massive drops and intricate passages tucked deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Its claim to fame? The Big Four Pits, four massive vertical shafts that challenge even the most seasoned experts. The deepest and most infamous is the Incredible Pit, 440 feet straight down. On Tuesday, March 10, 1999, three experienced cavers, Hal Bufford, Chris Andrews, and Anthony Bates, began their descent. Hal, at 28, was known for his love of these deep challenges. They weren't rookies. They had planned this for weeks, meticulously checking gear and weather. The goal? Conquer the Incredible Pit and explore the subterranean world at its base. The first parts of the cave are like an underground staircase. You start with a series of smaller, manageable drops, an 80-foot pit, then a tight sequence leading to another drop of 83 feet. Eventually, they reached the massive black mouth of the Incredible Pit. This is where the physics of the cave changes. Into this vast hole pours a significant stream of water. It falls the entire 440 feet, creating a non-stop waterfall that turns the pit into a freezing, turbulent gauntlet. A genuine cave diving disaster waiting to happen if you lose focus. They had two ropes spanning the void. One was a thicker half-inch line already left by a prior team. The second was the thinner 7/16-inch rope they'd brought and rigged themselves. Two lines, hanging close, whipping gently in the air current generated by the falling water. This small detail, having two ropes nearby, would prove to be the single most devastating factor later that night. The descent began. It was a freezing baptism. Each man was immediately battered by the cascade, the water feeling like needles on exposed skin. Chris and Anthony were smart. They wore specialized wetsuits. Hal, unfortunately, had less adequate gear, a light plastic rain suit layered over cotton and denim. Cotton is a killer in these conditions, offering zero insulation once saturated. The water leached the heat from him from the moment he started. After the long, grueling descent, they reached the bottom, a strange, silent world, massive in scale. They spent time exploring the lower passages, admiring the geological wonders, the stalactites and flowstone formations, all sculpted by the very water that had just tried to freeze them solid. It was a brief moment of quiet triumph and exploration. The easy part was over. Climbing out of a 440-foot shaft, especially a wet one, is an exhausting marathon. It's a full-body workout that tests everything: muscle, gear, and will. Chris was first, then Anthony. Slowly, painstakingly, they hauled themselves up the rope, emerging into the small space at the lip, soaked and absolutely spent. They were relieved, but not finished. Hal was still down there. It was almost 11:30 p.m. when Hal started his climb. Communication was impossible. The relentless roar of the falling water drowned out any shouts. The only sign of his progress was the rhythmic rising glow of his headlamp far below. Chris and Anthony watched, reassured by the steady upward movement. Everything seemed normal. Around midnight, the rhythm broke. Hal's lamp stopped its ascent. A few moments passed, then a few more. Then they heard it, a sound barely audible over the deafening cascade, muffled, frantic cries. It took Chris a moment to recognize the voice. Hal. He was shouting for help. Chris leaned out dangerously, using his powerful lamp to penetrate the mist. There, about 150 feet below the rim, Hal was dangling. His body was swinging erratically, his movements panicked. He was gesturing wildly, a clear sign of distress. They watched as his mouth opened and closed, his pleas for help instantly erased by the water. He was trapped. Why didn't his friends go down to help him? Because descending was not an option. The rope was already stressed by Hal's weight. Any secondary accident, a slip or a fall on a compromised line, would turn a dire situation into a double catastrophe. They were frozen by grim reality. All they could do was watch their friends struggle in the terrifying black chasm. The sheer helplessness was overwhelming.
So what exactly happened to Hal 150 feet up? The problem was simple yet deadly: rope tangle. When two ropes hang this close in a pit, they can easily twist together under the strain of a climber. Hal was using ascenders, devices designed to grip the rope and allow a caver to climb up. But he was on the half-inch rope, using ascenders meant for the smaller 7/16 line. This difference created massive friction, slowing him down, exhausting him, and complicating every movement. Exhausted and freezing, Hal attempted a desperate, complex switch to stop climbing and start rappelling down. This maneuver requires focus and precision. In his fatigue and panic, he got his gear hopelessly crossed. Both of his ascenders were still locked onto the ropes, under his full weight, while his rappelling device, a rappel rack, was only partially set up. He was now stuck, unable to ascend, unable to descend. The clock was ticking, and the environment was his executioner. Hal was soaked to the bone. The frigid water from the waterfall slammed into him relentlessly. His cotton clothes were a liability, pulling his body heat away at an alarming rate. He was developing severe hypothermia. His breathing became shallow, his jaw clenched against the violent shivers. He tried to re-rig, but the cold had stolen the fine motor control from his fingers. His grips were failing. Time was running out. For Chris and Anthony, the moment of painful realization came quickly. Hal's flailing had become weak, his shouts had faded to silence. They couldn't help him. Their single, grim option was to get out and call for help. They navigated the treacherous passages of Ellison's cave as fast as they could, battling the 80 and 83-foot upward climbs and the slippery, winding tunnels. By 2:30 a.m., they burst out into the cool Georgia night air and reached Walker County 911. The news instantly triggered a massive cave rescue operation. Experienced vertical cavers, emergency responders from the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, and dozens of dedicated volunteers began mobilizing. The mission was terrifyingly simple: save Hal Bufford. The rescuers were fast, but the cave is vast and unforgiving. It wasn't until 9 a.m. the next morning, nearly 9 hours after Hal first cried out, that the first rescue team reached the lip of the incredible pit. 9 hours of relentless cold and exhaustion. A rescuer shouted Hal's name into the churning abyss. Only the unrelenting roar of the waterfall answered. They rigged a hauling system, a complex network of pulleys and ropes designed to lift a human out of the shaft. Two rescuers began their slow, cautious descent. They reached the 150-foot mark. There, they found Hal. He was hanging motionless in his harness, a limp figure wedged between the two tangled ropes. His head was slumped, his body pale and frighteningly cold. Hal Bufford had died hours earlier. The freezing water, exacerbated by his inadequate cotton clothing, caused severe hypothermia, but the cause of death was compounded by a cruel secondary factor: positional asphyxia. His harness, which should have been his salvation, became a killer. Hanging motionless, trapped by the gear, the harness restricted blood flow and compressed his lungs. Late Wednesday evening, Hal's body finally emerged from the mouth of the incredible pit, out of the dark and into the daylight. More than 60 people participated in the complex, full-scale effort, a testament to the community of cavers and responders. Hal Bufford's death was a profound shock, the first fatality in the history of Ellison's cave. It remains a stark reminder that even for the most prepared adventurers, a small gear mistake, a sudden equipment failure, or a simple choice of inadequate clothing can turn a challenging climb into a fatal cave diving disaster.
In this next story, a young explorer ignored every warning and pushed forward, only to end up trapped beneath a massive boulder with the passage sealed shut behind her.
The morning of October 14th, 2003, began like many crisp autumn days in the Adirondack foothills of upstate New York. Blackthorn Caverns, a sprawling limestone cave system just outside the small town of Redwood Hollow, had long been a magnet for local explorers eager to experience its twisting passages and underground chambers. At around 10:30 a.m., 5 friends, Daniel Mercer, Brian Holt, Rachel Lynn, Mark DeVries, and Hannah Ivers arrived at the cave entrance. Their group was a mix of experienced spelunkers and curious newcomers. The air outside was chilly, hovering around 48 degrees Fahrenheit, 9 degrees Celsius, but inside they knew the cave would hold steady at about 52 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius, the constant underground temperature. They were prepared, helmets with mounted lights, spare flashlights, water, light snacks, and sturdy boots. The more experienced members carried small packs with first aid supplies and ropes. Before entering, they carefully signed the Caverner's register, a safety log that listed who had gone inside and when they were expected back. At about 11 a.m., the group stepped into the yawning black entrance. The first chamber was large enough to stand in, but quickly the passages narrowed. They chose to explore the dry route first, working their way through crawling sections and small chambers. Spirits were high as they marveled at formations and underground streams. After nearly 2 hours underground, they gathered in a larger chamber known locally as the Crossroads, a meeting point where several passages split off. The space was about the size of a classroom, with a ceiling high enough to stand comfortably. From here, narrow tunnels snaked off in several directions. It was here that things took a tragic turn. Among the many openings leading out of the crossroads was a dark slit in the wall that locals called the Stone Gate. It was a forbidden path, marked with loose rock and unstable boulders. The danger was well known. Several collapses had occurred there in the past, and experienced cavers avoided it. But Hannah Evers, the smallest in the group and eager to explore, didn't recognize the danger. The entrance looked like just another crawl space. Without hesitation, she slipped into the narrow gap, determined to see where it led. Her friends shouted after her, but before they could follow, disaster struck. Just as Hannah passed through the entrance, a low rumble shook the passage. Several large boulders shifted and tumbled down, crashing into the gap behind her. Dust filled the air as the rock slammed into place, completely sealing the stone gate shut. Panic set in. The others rushed to the blocked passage, calling her name. From the other side, Hannah could faintly hear them, but her path forward was now the only way through. The irony was cruel. The stone gate wasn't a dead end. Though dangerous, it eventually looped back to connect with the main safe passage further ahead. But Hannah didn't know this. She crawled onward, flashlight trembling against the jagged limestone. The crawl grew tighter as she pushed forward on hands and knees. Then, near where the forbidden passage curved to rejoin the main tunnel, the ceiling shifted again. Without warning, a massive boulder broke loose. It crashed down onto Hannah, striking her side and pinning her helplessly against the stone floor. Her cry of pain echoed through the dark corridor before fading to shallow gasps. Back at the blockade, her friends clawed desperately at the rockfall, trying to move stones that were far too heavy by hand. Hours dragged by as they failed to clear even a fraction of the collapse. They believed it was the only way to reach her, unaware that if they had simply continued down the main passage for another 200 feet, they might have stumbled right upon her. At 1:45 p.m., Brian Holt made the painful decision to exit the cave and call for help. By 2:30 p.m., local firefighters, EMTs, and a specialized cave rescue unit were on scene. Equipped with chisels, hammers, and drills, rescuers began working at the rockfall, while medics prepared for the possibility of hypothermia and crush injuries. Inside the cave, the trapped girl's situation worsened. Pinned under the boulder, Hannah's breathing was shallow. The cold limestone floor sapped her body heat, and the weight of the stone pressed mercilessly against her chest and legs. She drifted in and out of consciousness, alone in the dark. By 6 p.m., rescuers had made little progress at the collapsed entrance. It was then that a veteran caver, James Corbett, suggested exploring the main passage further ahead. He said if that route loops back, she may be closer than we think. At 6:40 p.m., Corbett and 2 others crawled deeper into the main tunnel. Their hunch proved right. Just minutes later, their headlamps illuminated a heartbreaking sight. Hannah, pinned beneath a massive slab of limestone, her helmet light flickering weakly against the cave wall. She was still, her breathing faint and irregular.
Rescuers rushed to her side, but the stone that pinned her was enormous, wedged tightly by surrounding rock. For the next 2 hours, they worked frantically with chisels and pry bars, slowly breaking away fragments. Dust choked the passage as they fought to free her. By 9:15 p.m., they finally shifted enough weight to pull her free, but it was too late. Hannah had succumbed to her injuries sometime during the long, agonizing wait. Wrapped in blankets, her body was carefully carried out of the cave, emerging into the cold night air at 10:30 p.m., almost 12 hours after the group had first entered. The tragedy left the small community shaken. Local caving experts later stressed how preventable it had been. The stone gate had been marked as dangerous for years. If the group had realized sooner that the path rejoined the main passage, Hannah might have been found hours earlier while she was still alive. Instead, the Blackthorn Caverns accident became a sobering reminder of the unforgiving nature of caves. One wrong turn, one misplaced stone, and adventure can become tragedy.